Finally, the moment we've all been waiting for is here. Daggerheart is fully released. We finally get to get our hands onto this new system. This video is going to run through some of the basic mechanics in Daggerheart and probably help you understand what's most different between other systems such as D&D and Pathfinder. So whether you intend on playing, listening, or watching, this is a good video to get a quick understanding of how this game works. So the best place to start is probably with the dice, so the Duality Dice. So you have your Hope dice and you have your Fear dice. And what does that mean? So in Daggerheart, when it comes to players and rolling for checks or attacks, anything like that, you're no longer using a d20. The DM still uses a d20 to roll for their checks, but the players actually use the Duality Dice, which are 2 d12s. And you might be familiar with them. You might pick them up by accident thinking they're d20s already. They kind of catch you off guard sometimes. An important thing when you're about to start a session is that you identify one of those dice as your Hope dice and the other one is your Fear. This can literally just be visually, if whichever way you want to decide it. Just once you know which one is your Hope, which one is your Fear, and you stick with that system for your session. The reason being how this game works, let's say you were asked to roll a check of some sort and you add your additional bonuses, what you're going to use to it, all that sort of stuff, and then you roll your 2d12, and so you add up your 2d12 plus your bonuses and you get your total. What the important thing is let's say you rolled a 12 and let's say you rolled a 6, so you have 18 and even plus 2, so you get a 20. So your total roll is a 20. Which dice rolled the higher value determines whether the roll in general was with Fear or with Hope. And why that's important is Hope is a currency for the players and Fear is a currency for the DM. Narratively, the Hope and the Fear also has some implications as well. So when it comes to if you fail a roll with Hope, there might be some, you might not get overall what you wanted, but there might be some, like you get a little bit of resource from it, and potentially might be a small little narrative beat there that's positive as well. Or consequently, if you pass a roll with Fear, you succeed at what you were going to do, but perhaps a new obstacle is now in front of, or a new obstacle has appeared for the next step of what you're trying to accomplish. So it's very important for DMs, don't hinder the players because they rolled with Fear. If it's a pass and they roll with Fear, they still accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. Get creative and add another little dynamic to it. Maybe if they're sneaking around a base of some sort, maybe a third guard appears. They covered a little bit of ground to sneak through with that check, but since they rolled with Fear, a third guard appears on his patrol or something like that. So as a player, you're going to want to be rolling with Hope most of the time. Now, I will say you only have a limit of, I think it's 5 or 6 is your total Hope that you can have at any one time. So don't be too afraid of using this currency. Like it's a pretty quick coming and going currency, I find, from the little bit I've played. But at the same time, you don't want to be stuck without any Hope to an awkward point at the same time. So you're it's a fine game of dance between. Don't want to spend too much. Don't want to be wasting the Hope I am getting by always having 6 and not being able to store anymore. So what does Hope do for the PCs? So using Hope, you can help out your teammates to perform while they're performing a check or even an attack, which in this system gives them advantage, which is an extra d6 on top of their Duality Dice roll. You can spend 1 Hope to use 1 experience, which gives you a bonus to your rolls. You might have a specific history in maybe the military and some sort of training, so you can spend 1 Hope to get that +2 or +3 from your military background for a check. And you can spend as much Hope for as many experiences you want. It's a 1-for-1 kind of currency, so 1 Hope lets you use 1 experience, get 1 bonus to it, but you can tax them on if it's relevant. The experiences are always going to have to narratively make sense in that moment, and like your GM or DM is going to have to agree that narratively that makes sense. So it might be a good thing to think about your experiences and how you hopefully want to implement them into the game. Maybe you don't want them too broad that they can fit everything, but you don't want them too narrow that you're barely being able to use them. Maybe mix and match of both though, you know what I mean? The next thing Hope can be used for is activating spells and abilities. When you have a read through your character's spell list and ability features, it will state whether you need to use Hope to spend, or you need to spend some Hope, to activate that ability, whether it be a spell, whether it be an inherent ability that your character has, anything like that. I've heard it described as like a liquid currency where it's very, very quick flowing between like out and in, essentially. So don't be too afraid. Like you'll learn your limits, but don't be too afraid of spending your Hope. Now the fun side for the DMs is going to be the Fear tokens. So as well as much as the players get to store their Hope, you you as a DM get to store fear. The DM has some very interesting ways that they can use fear, both in combat and outside of combat. So first use of fear is narratively, you can use it to make a scene harder. So you can spend a fear token to, once again, drop something into a scene or have something happening in the scene, which makes it that bit more difficult for your players to navigate. Once again, always going to have to make like narrative sense, whatever you choose to happen or increase the difficulty of a situation. Always don't have it be something absolutely random. Have it something in line with the situation that's possible. You know, I think an important thing with this is like it's what I like about the system is constantly playing with like interrupting and changing up the scene, the narrative scene, which I quite like. But it's important that you don't. And like I can see you very easily annoying the shit out of your players if you drop a fucking I don't know, a Trask in the middle of we're fighting this goblin camp and I'm going to spend a fear token. There's a Trask in it. You know what I mean? Let's be realistic to an extent, but don't torture your players, or do. I suppose I don't really care. They're not my players. Next one for fear is that a lot of the enemy creatures will have a specific move that you need to spend fear to use. I was playing through the quick start and you had a bunch of skeletons, and you had so many skeletons within range of a certain character. You could spend fear to have all these skeletons make like a short move and just swarm one person, and it didn't catch someone off guard too badly, but like it could have very easily destroyed somebody, especially with how the combat system works and the turn order system works in this game. So I can't wait to see what other enemies their special fear moves have and all that. It's gonna be very fun. You can use fear to get advantage on your roll, giving yourself another d20. Remember, DMs still use d20s, they don't use the duality dice. Fear is only actually generated from player rolls. The DM themselves don't actually generate fear for themselves. So it's all based off your rolls. So fear can also be used to end an effect or condition, which is usually stated in the effect or condition, like how much fear needs to be spent to end it. But that can be a very interesting one, because that can very easily turn the tides of combat if you can just instantly stop an effect on a creature, burning through some of your PC's resources as well. You can also use fear to add an extra damage dice to your rolls, which once again can be very brutal. And last but not least, you can actually use fear, which I think is probably the more interesting one. Is you can spend fear. I can't remember exactly now, if it's 2 or 3 fear. You can spend fear to interrupt the player's combat, and this will make a bit more sense in another video when we discuss how combat actually works in this game. But being able to interrupt the player's combat, usually you do not get to go as a DM until somebody fails a roll or they roll with fear, which surprisingly enough, sometimes they can get a nice little string of combat where they get pure attacks. But then when it comes over to your side, you just destroy the players. But that can be a very interesting one, because you can really catch your players off guard in a sense of they think, okay, yeah, we're going to prep these spells, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and then you play 3 fear, and all of a sudden you get to go, and your action tracker you could have 4 or 5 actions at that point. And maybe your mage didn't get to go and cast healing word or like a healing spell or something like this. You know what I mean? The combat is done very differently in this game, and I can't wait. I'll discuss that in another video, but it's really, really cool, and I can't wait to dig my teeth into it some more. One more fact about the fear is that you can only have a maximum of 10 fear, so it's important to keep track of that. I just used I used a D10 or whatever one you want. If you want to use D12 or whatever, but I use the D10 and I just roll it up every time someone rolls fear. You can get I imagine you can find some cool little tokens. Part of me would like, if I was playing at a table, to have the fear tokens visible to the players, because I think it invokes a bit of fear in it as well. When you can see, I was like, oh jeez, that's looking pretty full. Strike another chord of fear in your players. Why not make use of this? So going back to the mechanics of actually rolling your dice. Mentioned briefly earlier on that advantage in this game is done a little bit differently. So as a player, you roll your duality dice, your 2d12s. If the DM or GM says that you have advantage, you actually add a d6 to that roll. And on top of that, if you were given disadvantage on the check, you actually subtract the d6 from that roll. Which off the bat, a d6 doesn't sound like much, but considering that we're rolling 2d12s, your max number is going to be higher than versus a 1d20, obviously. It's decent, yeah. I know. Actually, I didn't think it would feel too great, but I think it's just the right amount of have additional success or potential for success. Also, for the Duality dice, a critical roll is, so a critical success in Daggerheart is when you roll the exact same number on both Duality dice. It doesn't matter what number it is that you rolled. Literally, once they are the exact same number, you've that's counted as a critical success. So on a crit, you automatically succeed in that duality roll. It also counts as a point of hope. And additionally, you get to clear 1 point of stress as well, which when we in the next video, when we talk about health and armor, you'll understand that a little bit more. Funny enough, there is nothing to do with doubling damage numbers so far our critical successes, which is an interesting change. I feel like a lot of people might homebrew that, might take away one of the other effects and replace it with damage. I feel like the critical hits are also, for me, it's about being a big hit, you know. Like, I don't know. I think I'd homebrew a little bit to some sort of damage multiplier there, maybe. Or maybe additional damage dice, something like that anyway. Alright guys, that has been the Duality dice. If there's anything I didn't cover that you want me to go into a bit more detail, let me know down in the comments. Next video, we'll be putting out some more Daggerheart videos going over some of the, I'm thinking maybe either want to do combat video or potentially some of the hit point system, because I think the hit point system might be a little bit different to what people coming from a lot of games would be familiar with. I haven't come across one similar to this yet. I'm sure there's other systems that have something similar, but I just, in my experience, haven't come across anything yet. So most likely going to be the hit point system and the armor system in the next video. But if you'd like to request something about Daggerheart for me to explain, drop it down below. Join our Discord if you want to get involved in some one-shots. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.